What was your worst "I got fired on the spot" moment? I was working at a Sonic. I think it was my third day on the job. I've just started cleaning the grill when the boss's son, who I went to high school with and had a few physical altercations with, purposefully bumps me so my hand touches the back of the grill. I burn the crap out of my hand and turn to punch him in the face. It was after I hit him I realized two things. His father is standing 10 feet away looking like he wants to end me and my bloodline, and that I have third-degree burns. He fired his son, fired me for punching his kid, and then drove me to the emergency room. You know what? All things considered, not the worst possible outcome. The fact that he made his son take accountability is something at least, but also clocking him at work with his father, not the brightest move for sure. I understand though, that sucks. A sudden burn will make you do crazy things. Next story. Wasn't fired, quit. I was hired as an IT worker for a medium-sized business. Not my field, but I learned enough about it in acquiring my degree to make do. Passed pre-employment drug test. Passed background check. Started work on Monday. After meeting some people and receiving some documentation, I began learning the ropes from another guy in the department. Suspiciously, the IT manager had told me that they had a jacket policy which required me to hang my jacket up all the way down the hall near the owner's office. Never mind the fact that all of the other guys in IT had their jackets near their workstations. Not thinking too far into this yet, I oblige. After about 45 minutes of learning some of the logistics of the department, the HR woman who hired me asked to, quote, borrow me for a minute. Does anybody else hate these phrases? I followed her to the IT manager's office to find my jacket splayed over a chair in post-search fashion. She informed me that they were concerned I was under the influence of alcohol or drugs. She listed 4 things. 1. I drank water from the drinking fountain twice. 2. My lips seemed dry. 3. I appeared agitated. 4. My pupils were dilated. In my head, 1. I require H2O to survive. 2. It's winter in the Midwest. 3. It is my first day in a corporate environment filled with folks I don't know in the slightest. And 4. Turned out to be a lie upon inspection. They informed me that the company policy was for me to take a drug or alcohol test immediately. I hold my tongue, other than expressing surprise, and go take the tests. HR woman drives me to a clinic. Negative prelim assessment. She informs me I can continue to work when I get back. I reply, oh, I'll be resigning when we get back. Silent car ride. Get into the building, head up to the IT manager's office and inform him I've passed the drug test but will be resigning. Something along the lines of not wanting to become part of an environment where the level of trust is so low. A poisonous atmosphere, if you will. Freaking people. Put them into a corporate structure and they become overly suspicious, backstabbing, autonomous bastards. Next story. When I was 21, I worked at a cheesy hotel resort in Phoenix. I had to hustle drinks from the restaurant and bar at the top floor of the 10-story resort to the people at the pool. Ground floor, obviously. It was a pretty fun job, actually. I got a lot of exercise, the customers were pretty fun, drunk, and having a good time. I spent most of my time outside, and I made really good tips. I wasn't too fond of my boss, though. She seemed really immature, harping, vain, just kind of a jerk, but whatever, people are people. One day I had to serve about 8 women. They were kind of like sorority girls. They got wasted and were super mean to me. Made fun of my uniform, made fun of me, would purposefully run me by massively staggering their orders, laughing hysterically every time, and of course, they stiffed me completely. 0 tip. Bad day at the office for me. The next day I went into work and my boss fired me for stealing money from those chicks. I didn't steal a thing, I was floored. They told her that I'd left with money and didn't come back with any change, like $15. I'd never do that. Anyway, she wouldn't give me my last paycheck until I gave the stolen money. She was such a total jerk about it too. I went to the bank and got $15 in pennies. I came back into the office and grabbed my last paycheck out of her hand and threw the pennies all over her office. I tried to run out, but she grabbed me by my hair. I got free but lost a chunk of hair in the process. I'd like to say it felt great, but it didn't. I went home and cried about losing a job that I liked and the injustice of the world. Next story. When I was 17, I worked at a Pizza Hut restaurant in the small town I grew up in. There was a guy there named Rodney, who was also 17 and a quasi-friend. We laughed and joked, but never hung out outside of work. One night, Rodney is working the drive-thru window while I worked the pizza board cutting and boxing the pies. At one point, Rodney runs over to my station to tell me there's a really hot woman at the window. I laugh and respond without thinking. I'll give you $20 to tell her that you want to lick her privates. Rodney goes back to the window and 5 minutes later is back at my station, demanding his $20. I thought he was kidding until the woman's husband comes into the restaurant 10 minutes later. Rodney told the manager that the only reason he did it was because I offered to pay him $20. Fired on the spot. Rodney was fired as well. Next story. This is kind of cheating because, well, here goes. So I was the only male waiter on the entire staff of a new Japanese restaurant that had just opened in my hometown. I'd been working there for a few weeks and the owner was still working there every day to make sure the place got up and running to his satisfaction. I hadn't had much interaction with him aside from exchanging pleasantries in Japanese. All the female managers painted a picture of him as a tyrannical jerk and we were all terrified to piss him off. He was very traditional in a lot of ways. Wrote poetry, did paintings, among other traditional arts. His wife was also working. A middle-aged, bird-faced, bleach blonde with a shrill voice and a drinking problem. She had a tendency to get in the way and keep me from properly doing my job. One very busy night, I'm waiting tables, skillfully and unobtrusively, as is my wont, and she kept following me, giving me suggestions. I go up to greet a table of 6 I had just taken, and as I'm attempting to take their drink orders, she flaps up and starts shrieking. "Make sure you get their drink orders! Are you getting their drink orders? Caw, caw, caw!" Finally, I decide I don't care about the job anymore and that she is driving me nuts. I take a wad of service napkins, hurl them directly in her face and yell, "Shut the hell up and let me do my goddamn job!" I go outside and wait the inevitable. Rusan comes outside, sits next to me and lights up. Looking in the middle distance, he sighs and says, "Whew, what did the freaking female dog do to you now?" Long story short, Rusan turns out to be a total sexist in the traditional Japanese manner. Managers and wife get bickered out and told to stop using his name to scare me, and to leave me alone, as a woman, quote, has no place ordering a man around. I got to keep my job, and I never got bothered again. TLDR, cussed out restaurant owner's wife in the middle of dinner rush, saved by reincarnation of Yukio Mishima. Are you sure you want to be working for that guy? Like, it works out for you, but he doesn't sound super pleasant. But hey, I get it. When it's tight, a job's a job, so I'm not going to judge. Next story. Not me, but a friend was working in downtown Indy on the 45th floor. He was in IT. Out of the clear blue on a Friday, they fire him for some made-up crap. He cleaned out his cubicle of personal items and left, determined to go to his neighborhood pub and tie one on. They have a cafeteria on the 40th floor, and having worked there for 8 years, he had gotten to know the people, so he stopped in to say bye. He saw some other people taking an early lunch at the cafeteria that he knew from the 38th floor. They saw his box of personal items and figured out he'd been fired. A quick discussion and impromptu job interview was set up. He was hired on the spot to start Monday. Didn't even have to take his stuff home. The best was Monday morning when he got in the elevator with his old boss. His boss asked, "Where are you going?" "To work," he replied. "Like hell you are," the old boss retorted. "I fired you Friday, don't you get that?" "Hey, I didn't say I was going to work for you, jerk." Priceless. Next story. My worst job to date. I was working as a game tech for an arcade. My job was supposed to be simple things like fixing ticket jams and token counters, but since I had a basic knowledge of computers and electronics, I was usually asked to do the more elaborate things that we normally left to my supervisor, who was responsible for actual repairs. It was our busy season, and unfortunately, we were understaffed. I was asked to work a lock-in after having worked an open and close shift, but I need the money, so I agreed. Before the lock-in, I was charged with setting the games to free play for the people who paid to stay overnight. By 3 a.m., the owner of the arcade could see I was physically and mentally exhausted and sent me home early knowing I had the next few days off. I reminded him about the games on free play, and he assured me my supervisor would fix them in the morning. Fast forward 2 days later, I come in for my opening shift and find 4 games still set to free play. I asked the owner what other game techs worked while I was off, since I had trained several on how to change games to and from free play. He informs me that only my supervisor worked while I was off. He asked why, and I showed him the games still set to free play. Irate, the owner then confronted my supervisor, reprimanding him for the obvious oversight. Jump forward 5 minutes and the owner went back to his business. My supervisor calls me to his office and tells me that since I can't be a team player, he's going to fire me. He continues that I should have been the one to take the blame since I was the one who changed them in the first place. Fast forward a few months later, I find out that the owner immediately fired my supervisor for firing me and wanted to hire me back, since I could do the supervisor's job anyway. But I had already found a better job. Next story. I worked at an IHOP kind of place washing dishes and a gas station many years ago. I was really barely making ends meet and couldn't always keep my clothes super clean for a lack of time with the working of 2 jobs. I barely had any clothes to begin with. So one day I was sick with a stomach bug, but I had to work. I ended up crapping my pants at the gas station, throwing out my undies with no backup. I thought I'd cleaned up really well, but I didn't notice that the crap bled through and was visible when I bent over to pick things up, and the pants were getting very thin in the back. Plus, I was still feeling sick. So off to my IHOP type job right after the gas station. I'm in the kitchen washing dishes like a champ, no problem. I get a 15-minute break and sit at a table and drink some hot tea. I guess I farted, but in reality it was much worse. Break over, back to work. Well, my crap-stained pants have now bled into the seat and a rip has developed in the back of my pants. I should have known that cool breeze wasn't normal and something felt wet. So my manager comes by to talk to me on my way to the restroom to investigate my pants. I take off my hat. "Oh, P," she says, "were you sitting at that table?" Pointing to where I drank my hot tea earlier. "Yeah," I said. "I took my break there. Why?" She says, "A customer says the chair smells like crap and was wet." My face lit as red as a baboon's butt, and I dropped my hat which I'd been clutching in my hands. When I bent over to pick it up, I guess I mooned half the restaurant and my manager with my crap-covered butt. Fired on the spot. I wish unemployment had been 99 weeks back then. Next story. I worked at a fast food joint when I was 17. In the middle of my shift, I got called into the back office by two managers. They told me, not accused, they presented it as fact, that $300 was missing from a till and that I had stolen it. Being young and very afraid, I bawled my eyes out and just went home. When my mother heard what happened, she was having none of it. Enter Supermom. My mother pulled together a bunch of facts and took the fast food chain to the labor board, eventually to court for unjust firing. When they fired me, they had absolutely no evidence I had committed any crime. No video. There were 2 cameras in the store and neither of them covered the register in question. Any employee on staff had access to the register at any given time, and also, I had just gotten paid $700 for 2 weeks where I had worked overtime. My mother caused an investigation, which ended up proving that a manager who had previously taken a disliking to me had actually stolen the money. One of the managers who had been present at my firing. I won over $7,000 in settlement and promptly put it into my university fund. Next story. They give me my schedule a week ahead of time and I wrote that crap down. No work on Thursday, so I didn't go into work. I show up for my shift Friday morning to see a new girl on the register. My boss is like, "Oh, why are you here?" I tell him to work, of course. He then tells me I missed my shift yesterday and he thought I wouldn't show up today. I was like, why didn't anyone call me? I had just started this job and he told me I should know my schedule by now and was fired. Next story. A buddy and I worked at a movie theater. He was working one day as a floor supervisor, which meant he was in charge of cleaning crap up. So this really old woman trips in the hallway and breaks her hip. It's a big ordeal. The ambulance has to come. This woman starts claiming she stepped on a raisinette and that it was the theater's fault. Who trips on a motherfucking chocolate-covered raisin? So the manager, who was new to the theater, gets worried and decides to suspend my buddy to hopefully make the woman feel better. My friend was really mad about the whole situation and was already sick of our new boss, so he decides to take a box of raisinettes and pour them all over the floor in the manager's office. He then starts stomping around yelling, "Do you see this? Do you see how they smash when I step on them? It's impossible to trip on a freaking raisin." Fired on the spot. Worth it. Narrator's commentary. People are just so excited to blame anyone other than themselves for something. And hey, fair enough. Breaking your hip is a big deal. That sucks. Tripping on a raisin, though, is probably not what did it, if I had to guess. If anyone had to guess, really. Next story. While working in a convenience store when I was in high school, I had a customer come in and ask for the price on a carton of cigarettes. I'd never actually sold a carton of cigarettes at this store and didn't smoke, so I legitimately didn't know how much one would cost. I offered to ask the owner when they came in later. For some reason unknown to me, this was not an appropriate answer, and the lady went all Rosie O'Donnell on me. Later I received a phone call. It is a customer who is wondering about the price of a carton of cigarettes. I repeated my position on this topic was one of ignorance and would have to refer to the owner. Click. She hangs up on me. Not 2 minutes later, I receive another phone call, this time asking about the price of some type of beer. Now, I am not so ignorant that I can't tell this is the same grown woman who has been raising hell about cartons of cigarettes, but I am curious to see what lengths she's willing to go to, so I play along. I find the price of beer. Next, it is whipped cream. Again, I find the price, but it mentioned that it is the tub and not the canister. "Oh, it's the tub," she says. "Well, that should still work." Laughing in the background is overheard. "Well, do you have rubbers?" she asks. Laughing in the background becomes hysterical. Classy folk I'm dealing with at the ripe age of 16. Yes, I believe we do, I say. A single pack is such and such a price. Oh, well, that seems pretty expensive. The background is silent. You're right. That does seem expensive, I respond. I'll tell you what, you can come in and pick up your beer and whipped cream and a pack of rubbers, and then go screw yourself, female dog. I hang up the child with a sense of accomplishment, only to see a mother with her young child standing at the soda cooler unimpressed. Fired the next day. Next story. A year ago, I was working as a tour guide at Madison Square Garden, the world's most famous arena. My entire department was called in for an emergency meeting where they proceeded to tell all of us we would be out of a job in 2 days. Apparently, someone high up in the company decided that with all the renovations going on, that having tours was not acceptable. We asked if we were going to get any kind of severance or anything for being laid off with 2 days' notice. The HR VP in the room said, "If you were, we would have told you about it already." 2 days later, on my last day, I told my boss that I felt the company was one of the worst companies I've ever worked for. Then called my boss's boss and told her the same thing. I then got in contact with a bigwig friend of a friend at a major media corporation in NYC and told them what happened. About a week later, I got a call from my boss's boss, the one who I bickered out on the phone, telling me, "So, because we didn't give you any notice, we're going to give you 2 weeks of pay." I figured they thought it would be cheaper to just pay us all 2 weeks of salary, which wasn't much anyway, than deal with the bad publicity. Okay, I have no idea how labor laws work there, but is that not just illegal? Like fired without cause? For 2 days' notice? That seems just straight up not allowed. The 2 weeks thing seems more like covering their butts than it does preventing bad publicity. I don't know. I don't know labor laws in New York. Next story. Not me, but a former friend. So this guy had been working as a meat wrapper in the butcher department of Safeway for years. Every now and then a customer would accuse him of being a creep trying to peek up skirts and stuff. He was a really nice guy, cripplingly shy, so he had enough clout to get away with it. One day he was standing behind the seafood counter, self-pleasuring in the open like it was nothing. Some lady shopping for some beef ended up getting an eyeful and reported it to the cops. He tried his usual deny, but ended up confessing. TLDR got fired for mishandling the meat. Next story. We were closing down the bar after a big Saturday night, and my boss asked me and someone else to stay, unpaid, for another hour to mop the floor because the cleaners wouldn't be in the next day. After my boss had exited the room, I turned to my colleague and say, "Screw that. I'm going to throw a bucket of soap water over it, make a sandwich, and then have a nap on the sofa." The stupid smackhead wouldn't know a clean floor if he was snorting H off of it. I turn around laughing and see my boss stood behind me, about to hand me the keys to lock up for the night. Oops. He's right behind me, isn't he? Next story. I used to be a DJ at a strip club downtown, and we had a regular customer who owned a local area sports bar. He offered me a job about once a week when he was wasted to come and be a bouncer at his place, because I'm also a pretty big guy. Right around Christmas time, I figured I could use the extra money, so on a whim I told him I would work for him for a few weeks on the side. The first night there, he told me that he only had 2 rules: don't drink on the job, and don't mess with his daughter Shannon, bartender and fellow drunkard. So, about 1 week after that, I stayed after hours and had a few cocktails with her and some of the waitstaff, and the next morning I, 22 and virile, wake up to him yelling some foul obscenities and a very naked Shannon next to me on a fold-out couch in his living room. I was very fired. Next story. I registered just so I could tell this story. Years ago, I got my first ever job working at a Second Cup. They had blend tech blenders, you know these things. I was so excited because days before I got the job, I watched this guy blend a rake, some marbles, and other crazy things. On maybe my 4th or 5th shift, I noticed one of the milk bags in the fridge was leaking. Instead of putting it in another container, I thought, perfect, let's try out this blend tech. Not perfect. Before I could say that was disappointing because it didn't blend, the manager walked out from the back and I was fired. Next story. I worked at Tiger Direct. Got fired 30 minutes after the store closed as soon as the investigation ended. Someone stole a laptop and they blamed me. Not for stealing it, but for aiding the thief. This was false. I gave the laptop to the cashier and told her it was for that guy. The guy slipped out of line and said, I forgot one other thing. Came back with a monitor box and placed it beside the laptop to hide it away from the cashier's point of view. While she was cashing other people out, he swiped the laptop, walked up to the greeter at the door and said, "This is my laptop, I was just getting it repaired." The greeter let him go, and off he went on his merry way. Tiger Direct does not have barcode door detectors. The greeter also got fired at the end of the shift, and he was rehired 5-ish months later because he has Down syndrome and was going to sue the store. Screw that place. That was my first infraction, and was there for 2 years as a service technician. Selling laptops wasn't even my job. I was doing the salesman a favor. The same thing would have happened to anyone, but because I touched the laptop, I was automatically labeled as an aid in theft. Unemployment insurance saw through my boss's bullcrap reasoning and compensated me for 9 months of same-wage pay. Win. Next story. I was working at a telemarketing place. Horrible job. The company sold those paper rolls you put into debit machines at 5 times the normal price. The pitch was essentially designed to trick the caller into thinking we were the usual supplier and we were just calling to confirm an order. It was selling by lying. Obviously, I decided it was unethical and I refused to do it, but I didn't tell them that, of course. Instead, I would go into work every day, put on my headset, and pretend to call people. Sometimes, if a supervisor was nearby, I actually had to call people and go through the pitch. On occasion, a caller would fall for it, and I would have to tell them to not buy anything from us. It was great fun. On the 4th or 5th day of work, the head office of this company was raided by the cops. We didn't have work that day. We came back the next week, and our company had a new owner and a new company name, and it was back to business as usual. I think they were a bit distracted with hiding from the authorities, and it took them 2 weeks to notice I hadn't done anything the whole time I was there. Finally, the new owner called me into his office and told me I hadn't sold anything, and that I had to change my attitude or I would be fired. I apologized and said I would try harder. The next day I did what I normally did, pretended to call people and drew epic pictures on the back of the calling lists. The boss called me into his office again. He was furious, so angry that I would dare to lie to him about trying harder. I have to admit, I was a little confused. Did he not realize what kind of company he was running? Anyway, I just smiled at him and walked out. I had successfully acquired enough money to get home for Christmas, so I was quite pleased with myself. Next story. Worked as a milk delivery boy. My job was to sit in the back of the truck, grab the milk as I was told, and run between houses until my hands were empty. Specific orders for specific houses. We communicated via radio headsets. The guy in the truck was the one with the list of what milk goes to which houses, so we relied on him. Third night of training, my headset started malfunctioning. I could only just hear the boss in fits and starts. At one point, jumped out of the truck with 3 bottles of milk and only caught the first address to deliver to, thus couldn't deliver. Run back to the truck, say, "This headset is broken, I can't deliver." He says out the window, "This job isn't right for you. We don't need you anymore." I put the milk back in the truck and walked the 8 kilometers home. Next story. Didn't happen to me, but to a friend of mine. I'll try to do it justice. He wrote a script that got a lot of attention in Hollywood, and he got a bunch of calls to see if he would become a staff writer on a few different TV shows. So he goes in to see a TV bigwig, and as he sits down to interview, the guy hits a button under the desk, and behind him the door to the office automatically shuts and locks itself. My friend looks back at the door, then back at the exec, and says, "Are you going to screw me?" The exec stares at him for a long second before saying, I don't think this is going to work out. Next story. This is more of a quitting on the spot story, but it's a favorite of mine. So a friend of mine gets a job at Taco Bell in high school. 3 hours into his first shift, they asked him to take out the trash to the dumpster out back. So he did, but as he was walking there, he realized he hated the job and was parked right next to the dumpster. So after disposing of the trash, he just got in his car and drove away. Didn't go back inside or say a word to anyone. Just left with the trash and never came back. Next story. My freshman year of college, I worked for this really crappy hookah bar / pizza place, mainly because it was walking distance from my dorm, and I didn't have a car. This place was pretty known for having an extremely high turnover rate, and I had heard a lot of stories about how horrible the management was. For some reason, I took the job. About 2 months into the job, I had to work the late night shift where I got off at 4 in the morning, and I needed to sign up for classes that same morning. My school had us sign up for classes online at around 2 or 3 a.m. for some reason. I'd mentioned to management that I needed to take 30 minutes to sign up for classes if they were going to schedule me to work on that day. I didn't think it would be a problem because we were never busy during the weekdays, and I was a really good worker overall. So the time came to sign up, and the manager that was there that night refused. We weren't busy. He had no reason to not let me. I explained to him it would take less than 30 minutes because I brought my own laptop, and he still refused just to be a jerk while he was sitting at the table, smoking a cigarette, doing nothing. We debated about this for a couple of minutes until he finally said something along the lines of, You're wasting your money. It's not like you're gonna get far in your life anyways. Now get back to work," implying that since I'm a woman, I should be treated this way. He was extremely sexist and would hit on all the waitresses, expecting them to respond positively because we're women and we should respect men. I told him I was livid and told him off. He then told me to get the hell out. I left with no regrets except not having left earlier. I didn't even get my last paycheck because we were paid under the table. The place ended up getting a ton of lawsuits from ripping people off and hiring delivery drivers that didn't have car insurance, one of which totaled someone else's car because he was drinking on the job. Seriously dumb people. Next story. Not my story, but a friend told me a story he saw happen to his coworker. These two old ladies, white, are walking around in circles, and the coworker, black, asks if she can help them. The two old women immediately start flinging racial slurs at her, telling her that they don't want her help. My friend, white, trying to pacify the situation, offers to help and tells his coworker to just brush it off. They aren't worth getting angry at. But no, the coworker wasn't going to take the insults lying down. She started arguing with them, and eventually this drew the attention of their boss, and she was fired, even after she explained the situation. But that's not the end of the story. The coworker leaves before the old women do, and the moment they step into the parking lot, she comes out from around the corner and punches these old racist women square in the face, knocking them butt over tea kettle, and then takes off in her car. When the cops did an investigation, the manager denied the event ever happened, and that the woman was in the process of being fired in his office where the supposed assault took place. She got rehired. Okay, what I don't understand here is, was the boss always intending on hiring her back? Or was it only after she beat the crap out of these two old ladies that he was like, whoa, okay, I'll give you your job back, just don't get me next. Next story. I was a pre-TSA airport screener. I missed an OPT, operational test piece, basically a big chunk of metal in the shape of a gun. It was on the body of a fat guy on his upper inner thigh. I'm not sure if I went too fast or not high enough up his crotch, or if I had actually turned on my wand, but I didn't hear it beep. My district manager calmly walked up to my direct supervisor, spoke something to her, and my supervisor called me over to her desk where the district supervisor informed me of my mistake, simultaneously informing me of their new zero-tolerance policy for DOT testing failures, and fired me in front of all of my coworkers. The company was looking to be taken in by the TSA. I hated working airport security, so it wasn't all bad. I also managed to get a pity bang from a coworker later that night. Next story. Worked at Sonic about 6 years back. We had a blind guy who lived in an apartment complex across the street. He'd walk over to get lunch almost every day. I was outside car hopping when someone hit him and drove off. I dropped the food, ran inside, and grabbed a cook and sprinted to the middle of the street to help the guy out. Boss yells after us that we're fired if we leave. Oh, freaking well, right? Anyway, we were rehired 30 minutes later when they got their crap together, and I got a $30 tip from some lady who saw the whole thing. The poor man didn't make it, though. Next story. 2 years ago, it was my second job. I was working as a cashier at Pick 'n Save. Someone who was in my line left 2 packages of bottled water on the bottom of their cart. I didn't catch it, nor did the person bagging, so they got out without paying for them. I was taken to the back room by security. They asked me if I knew what it was about, and I had no idea. They told me what happened and proceeded to call the police on me. I was fired, given a $303 ticket, and arrested. They cuffed me pretty forcefully, actually, as if a 17-year-old 95-pound girl posed a huge threat to them, and walked me out in front of everyone. I eventually got the retail theft charge dropped from my record under the circumstance that I paid the $303 ticket. The attorney told me if you lose the company money in any way, excluding injury, it was a completely valid reason to press charges against a person. It was enough to make me strongly dislike large companies a whole lot. Next story. I was a co-owner of a coffee shop, and we both pulled shifts behind the counter making drinks with the employees. One day, some guy orders an iced toddy. We make the drink to the usual specs. He complains it isn't strong enough. I tell him it will cost extra to add a toddy shot. He says to do it. I add the shot and announce the new higher price. He then shoves the drink across the counter at me and says it still isn't strong enough. I add another shot, free in order to get him out of there and off my back, re-announce the price. He then pushes the drink across the counter back at me and says, "I'm not paying for this crap." It was summer and hotter than hell behind that counter. I done my best to please him, even throwing in a free shot, and I snap. I throw the ice drink into his chest and shout, "Well, then you can go screw yourself with the cop." He storms out. I immediately find my business partner and tell her what happened. She says I'm never to work the counter again. We had to start another auxiliary business for me to put my share of work into. Next story. Not me, but a friend. He was working stage crew at the Metropolitan Opera House in NYC. His job was to change the slides on the projector during the show. I think it was one of the Ring Cycle operas if I recall correctly, and when he went to change it, he put in the wrong slide. So he finally fixes his gigantic screw-up in front of a whole audience, and as he's getting down from the ladder, his boss shows up to ask what's going on. No sooner does he start explaining when the director of the opera comes backstage and begins to tell his boss that he better, quote, find that freaking freaktard and fire his butt, ASAP. So his boss, instead of selling him out, goes, as soon as I find him, I swear I will. And the director leaves. Then he turns to my friend and goes, so, I've got some bad news. TLDR, friend screws up at Met Opera. Director personally investigates, has awesome boss, and still gets fired. Next story. I have a concession business where I set up at different locations and sell food. Having odd hours and dates, sometimes it's hard to find workers. One place I set up regularly has catering staff, and I hired one of their guys for a weekend. He seemed like a nice kid and was recommended by the manager of the catering company. As I was coming back to my booth from a restroom break, I rounded the corner and saw him stuff a $20 bill in his pocket. I opened the register, gave him his total hourly wage he had earned minus $20, and told him to get lost. I can't have a crook working for me. Just at that moment, the manager of the catering company walked by and asked what was going on. I told him he stole money and was no longer wanted. The manager looked at him and said, I recommended you over 30 different people. I can't have a thief working for me either. You're fired. The kid managed to get fired from 2 jobs within 20 seconds. World record, getting fired twice speed run. Congratulations, kid. Give your reward speech. Alternatively, find another job and maybe don't steal from this one. Next story. My husband and I washed dishes at a local sports bar back in the day. We ran out of dish soap and the machine broke in the same day. So the general manager told us to wash the greasy dishes by hand with scalding hot water until they were clean. No matter how hot the water is, the dishes will stay greasy without soap. My husband tried to explain to this freaking moron. He actually got in my husband's face, accusing him of calling him a liar in front of, quote, his kitchen. So I cut in. Really? This is silly. We can't do dishes without soap. We can do them by hand, but he's right. They'll stay greasy without it. Cue giant unnecessary explosion of expletives, and I was fired. I was so mad that I didn't get to hear the wonderful remarks he made to my husband. Gonna get lippy too? Yeah, I am. So he proceeds to storm through the dining area screaming at the top of his lungs not to eat here. They don't clean the dishes or the kitchen. They serve rotting food to customers. And, my favorite, when ordered to clean the fresh fridge storage one slow day, we scraped mold and mildew from the floor that, when left at room temp for only a short period, began to smell strongly of crap, which probably explained the food poisoning that both our friend who worked behind the line and I got after eating a salad wrap. Our mistake. We also wrote a letter to the health department about everything I told you. Needless to say, they closed it down shortly after canned. I hope this dude reads this because I forgot to say, yeah, in your freaking face. Next story. I used to work at Staples, an office supply store, and one day I was bored as crap, so I decided to make a fort. We used to have this big cage where we kept supplies in the back. There was just enough room to climb on top of it and hang out, so I decided to build a fort up there with empty boxes and styrofoam and whatever I could find. So slowly, day by day, I built this epic fort up, all while keeping a captain's log of the status of the fort. As time went by, I acquired crew members, and the fort grew to become known as the USS F. Staples. We were 3 strong and beginning to loot Staples with our new pirate ship. We stole small things like staplers and pens and flash drives. We recorded all of this in the captain's log. The following is my best recreation of one of the captain's log entries. Captain's log, entry number 8. Morale medium to high. Crew size 3. Date May 15th, 1770. Acting Captain Brody Broderson. We have seized enemy materials from aisle number 2. Their island is rich in the resources of ink and paper. The men have suggested we create a base fort on Island 2 in order to formulate an attack on Isle 3. I will consider such tasks in the morning. For now, we feast on this 1-pound container of cashews looted from the registars. Tonight, we feast. We feasted and ended up leaving the empty cashew container out, and a manager found it. He then discovered the fort, which is amazing he didn't discover it before. He climbed up and found the captain's log, and crap. He fired me on the spot. They made me sign a form that admitted to stealing the cashews. On the form, I wrote, I, Captain Brody Broderson, of the USS F. Staples hereby denounce my role as captain and take full responsibility for stealing cashews from Staples. Screw you. And that was the last time I worked at Staples. You know, as cool and fun as this is, it is yet another case of don't leave a log of the illegal things you do. Like, come on, man, how easy is it not to write down all your transgressions? Next story. I'll try and keep this short. I was young, naive, and just got a car. Why not be a delivery boy? Local pizza shop. Owner, an old colleague of my dad, former cop. Second to last delivery of my first and only day as a pizza boy. After the pizza is paid for, I hear an old man crying at the bus stop. It's 11 p.m. Sir, are you all right? Why are you crying? I'm blind and I don't know where my bus is. I think I must have missed the last one, and I just want to get home. How far do you live? A few blocks down, but I can't go on my own. I'll drive you. Get in. 20 minutes later, we haven't reached his apartment complex. Is there someone I can call? I ask. No, he says. I don't remember the number. My boss starts calling me at that point, demanding to know where I am and why I haven't delivered the pizza that's sitting in my back seat. I ignored his first two calls. I pull into his complex at 11:30. Thank you so much, he says through tears. I never would have made it by myself. No problem. I sigh. Have a good night and be safe. As he turns to shimmy through the front door of the local retirement home, I pick up the third call from my boss. I tell him the pizza hasn't been delivered, I got lost. He orders me back to meet him at the customer's house. When I get there, he's storming out of the customer's yard with his own piping hot pizza. I step out and immediately apologize, but I'm interrupted by having to dodge a pizza box flung at my head. Before I can say anything else, he rips open the passenger side door of my car, finds my travel map, and tears it to shreds. In the process, and between curses, he breaks my indoor light and lightly abuses my rearview mirror. I'm helpless as he takes all the money I earned. If you know what's good for you, he snarls as spit flies in my face, you won't show up tomorrow. I cried on the way home, but smiled in the morning when I remembered that old man. For some reason, I thought the old man was gonna con OP in some way, and that's gonna be the big problem. No. This owner is just a jerk. Or your boss, manager, whoever. Either way, OP, let it be known that to the universe, you did right. Next story. My buddy was working at a soup plantation, a salad bar buffet restaurant that had just opened, and he was the only person there who spoke English but not Spanish. He was supposed to be a cashier but was constantly made to bus tables or help to make butters in the kitchen by endlessly scooping butter into those little paper dishes. He's doing this again one day and just takes a little paper note and writes on it, Via con Dios, leaves it at his station and walks out without saying anything. They sent him his last check a week later. Next story. I work as an English teacher in South Korea. My first school was a private academy. The first year was pretty great, but the school hired a new accountant around the same time as me. I paid into the National Pension Fund for 3 months, which is required by law. The new accountant used a, quote, loophole and said I don't need to pay pension, which my school has to match. I didn't think this was correct, but he was an accountant. Fast forward 1 year, my school has become a crap hole to work for. Myself and other teachers look into Korean law and find they have to pay us pension. We tell them that they have to pay us pension. They say they will if we take a $50 pay cut a month. The new teachers agree. We say screw that. So myself and 3 other teachers submit our pay slips to the National Pension Office. They investigate and find our school was illegally denying us pension. The school knows it was me and my coworkers. Technically, couldn't fire us, but they gave us extra work hours and then asked us if we would terminate our contracts with them early. Bottom line is, we screwed the school over and they had to pay almost $20,000 to back pay our pension, plus penalties for not paying us. My pension amount comes to about $3,000 that I can receive next time I leave Korea. They tried to screw us, so we screwed them twice as hard, and I got to leave that crappy school early with prorated benefits. Plane ticket plus severance pay. Next story. Used to be a cable repair / install tech. Until about a month ago. I came down with a nasty flu and had to miss a few days. First time I called in, neither manager answered their phone, so I left a message with the head manager. Second day, I sent them both an email so I would have a copy due to a nagging feeling. Third day, I was still feeling like total crap, so I had to call in one more day, but made mention that I'd be in the day after that. A Saturday, usually known for being pretty busy, no matter what. This whole time, I hadn't heard from them one bit. No confirmation, no requests, nothing. Finally, that night, the head supervisor replied saying I couldn't come in without a doctor's note, and that he was already angry I hadn't tried contacting them them until that day. He had also CC'd a few higher-ups in his reply, I guess to make his attempt to humiliate me as public as possible. So I reply by citing the records on my phone of when I called him and the other supervisor, quoting both emails sent, and also deciding now would be a good time to remind him yet again what my days off were, since I know that he tended to forget and root me anyway. After that, I asked what he wanted me to do, since I don't have a doctor's note. I sent the reply to him and everyone he CC'd. A few hours later, he hadn't responded, so I tried calling him yet again, to no avail. The next day, they rooted me anyway. In fact, they expected me to do what came out to be 6 hours of work in a 3-hour period, along with the rest of my route. I went back to sleep. The secretary called me a couple days later and informed me they decided to terminate me. As an epilogue, I went to turn my tools in a couple weeks later. I wasn't in any hurry, and the guy was there. He wouldn't even look at me, despite us standing right next to each other and me looking straight at him, waiting for him to say something. Next story. My fired on the spot story isn't exciting, but I am amazed at what some people will do just to maintain their power position. I nannied for a very rich family for quite a while. I was young, 18 at the time, but had watched the kids for close to 2 years. Of course, I was still in school at that age, but watched the kids several nights a week during the school year and about 100 hours a week during the summer. These people were like lottery rich, and they didn't work a real job, so I was the only one watching their kids, even during the school year. They were really cool. It was a sweet job. I watched all 4 kids under the age of 5, cooked, cleaned, and did laundry for a pretty low wage, $6 an hour. They treated me really well, paid me over my agreed-upon wage pretty routinely. They knew my boyfriend at the time, told me I could have him over any time. He could stay the weekend while they were out of town. I loved the kids like my own. Taught them all kinds of things, always had art projects for them, etc. It was generally a sweet arrangement for everyone involved. One year I told them I wanted to spend Valentine's Day going out with my boyfriend and wouldn't be able to watch the kids that night. The dad told me not to come back. I'd been with their kids all that time, had taken care of the youngest since the days just after his birth, etc. He didn't try to explain, hey, I had big plans for that night, can we work something out? Or anything like that. Just, if you can't work that night, don't come back. I never saw the kids again. Next story. Unfortunately, or fortunately, this didn't happen to me, but happened to people who worked at my organization. I work for an agency that has a housing counseling department and a weatherization department. The weatherization department was previously made up of felons, degenerates, morons, druggies, and all-around dip craps. I worked in the housing side of things, but have since transitioned in order to write the massive crap show that was our weatherization branch. After our crew guys repeatedly showed up to jobs high as crap, the one guy who didn't smoke reported all of them, causing my executive director to flip crap and ordered a drug test for all of them. Obviously, this was bad news for everyone else. When they got to the drug testing place later that week, the guy who reported them, who despite not smoking on the job was a total jerkhead, found out that the other 5 guys all had somehow gotten clean pee from someone. Not only had they gotten clean pee, and I don't know who they got it from, but in order to sneak it in, since you obviously can't carry it and they check your pockets, they taped little vials of pee underneath their balls. In order to try to expose them, the guy who rattled on them then tried to initiate a fist fight with the other guys in the freaking drug testing place, hoping to somehow dislodge the little pee vials from their balls. The lady working at the clinic flipped crap, rightfully, and threw them all out, threatening to call the cops. My executive director then found out that a fist fight broke out amongst our crew at the drug testing place and immediately fired the guy who ratted as he started it, which was an ironic, massive backfire to his plan. All the other idiots got off scot-free somehow, but inevitably were fired for various other screw-ups in the next few months. The best two being when they were so high that they accidentally cocked an old lady's front door completely shut so she couldn't get out, or when they accidentally spray-foamed themselves shut inside the underbelly of a trailer. I have no clue how that's even possible. TLDR, I worked with absolute freaking morons. Next story. I was working as a waiter at a small fine dining restaurant in Elkridge. One day, my pregnant manager and I got into it about the contents of the dessert of the day, a Kentucky Derby tart. The pastry chef told me that today they were out of pecans and were using walnuts instead. I told another waitress, but the Prego manager stepped in and disagreed. We got into an argument about it, and I explained my position, and eventually it was decided that due to her superior culinary expertise and managerial position, the customers would be told that the tart would be made with pecans, and I was not to address the issue with the kitchen. I told the pastry chef, She was confused and talked to the Prego manager, who became more upset. Upon arrival of the general manager after lunch service, she snuck upstairs to talk to him. 2 minutes later, he came down and fired me on the spot for insubordination on the grounds that I should not have talked to the pastry chef after being told not to. Sure, yeah, let's lie about the ingredients in something. That has never gone wrong before. No one on earth has any reason to not be able to eat certain things, especially certain types of nuts. That would just be crazy. These people should lose their dang restaurant, dude. Next story. I was an operations officer for a civil affairs company deployed in Iraq. There was an officer working for the brigade that my company supported. He seemed to be under the impression that he was my boss. He was not my boss, but he sure acted like he was. He didn't like my real boss, my company commander, so my real boss and I decided that we'd just work with this relationship as is. Long story, we won't get into it. This isn't an AMA. Anyway, one day my unboss decided to fire me. I'm not sure why. He got a first lieutenant into the office, and then he told me that the new guy would do my job and that my new job would be to manage the budget instead. My subordinates were speechless. How did I resolve this? Well, I said, "Yes, sir." Then I continued to do my job normally, as though the entire conversation had never happened. The only change was the new lieutenant's job was to keep the major happy. There was some friction between him and the rest of my team at first, but I did everything I could to smooth things over. This unboss I mentioned really was a capable staff officer. Really, honest. He had his quirks, but who doesn't? I'm sure I have mine. But this whole scenario is the damned weirdest thing that ever happened to me in the military. It's like something out of a sitcom rather than reality. I wish I were a better writer with this kind of material. Next story. Here we go. From the beginning. Over the summer, I was incredibly depressed. Like thinking about how difficult it would be to take my own life without any tools depressed. There were no jobs in Michigan. I'd looked for 2 years. I wasn't 18 yet. Finding one just wasn't going to happen. I decided, basically, I'm going to leave. I had no idea where I was going. I didn't care. I was leaving. I told my mom, and she suggested Alaska. She had friends there are jobs there, good times and all that. And then my trip began. I would use my money to fly to Alaska and see how difficult it would be to get a job and make some money. I arrived there on October 4th and began my quest for jobs. Let me tell you, if ever a job land full of jobs growing on jobbies there was, Alaska is it. I began looking, and where in Michigan I never even got one call back from many applications, here I got at least 5 in the first 3 weeks. Bam, I got a job at a pizza place. I'd have to deliver, deal with customers, the whole shebang. Well, I decided I didn't need a car, so I found a nice one, a 1989 Beretta. It was standard, but I figured I could learn how to drive it. My first 2 days at work were fine. I didn't have to deliver or talk to anyone. It was all pizza prep and dishwashing. It was awesome. But on the third day... for this to make sense, my vehicle situation needs to be fully understood, first of all. I had at my disposal a total of 4 vehicles. I had an Excursion, some truck, a crappy freaking Jeep, and my Beretta. Usually I'd take the truck, but this day it wasn't working. It just absolutely refused to start. Since it wasn't working, I decided I would have to take the Jeep, since the Excursion was currently in use and I couldn't drive the Beretta. So I get there, and this is the day they have me make my first delivery. I mean, it wouldn't be a problem usually, but I've got the Jeep. I decide to just roll with it. What are the chances anything will go wrong? Well... First delivery ever, and I get pulled over for not having my headlights on. The cop comes up, and the first thing he says is, "You realize this Jeep has no seat, right?" I mean, what the hell do I say to that? I went through the motions, called my boss, and waited it all out. In total, I had $510 for no insurance, $100 for expired plates, $40 for missing light in the back, and a ticket of unknown value for missing a seat. On the ticket for missing a seat, I had 6 points added, and the insurance added 6 points. 12 points means no license. So we get back, and my boss is like, "What the hell is this? You didn't tell us your car had no seat. What the hell?" And I basically said, yeah, it sucks, man. And I won't even get to keep my license. Hindsight's 2020. I mean, at first it seemed like I might keep my job, but then I said, oh crap, I left my wallet in the Jeep. That pushed him over the edge. I got fired right then and there. 3rd day, bro. In the end, though, it worked out fine. I decided I surely can't stay in Alaska. I had the money to return to Michigan and still pay off the ticket, and sooner or later, the people who housed me. For some reason, I'm even out of my depression. I have no clue why. Really, though, the only thing I'm mad about is that idiotic police officer. He was so full of crap. He gave me the seatless ticket, which he later said basically, "Lol, JK, that ain't crap, don't worry," and gave me misinformation about rescinding the insurance ticket so I wouldn't have to pay it. Ah well, c'est la vie. Next story. It's not mine, but my aunt's. Back in the 70s, she worked at a steak and ale. Her good friend was just promoted to a waiter from busboy, and a fairly large family came in. He served them for over 2 hours, pretty much busting his butt making sure they had everything they could possibly need. Well, after they finished, he came back to see they left a 10-cent tip. Naturally, he was furious, so he ran outside and threw the dime at their car. Well, the father gets out of the car and complains, and he's demoted back to being a busboy. My aunt then asks their boss to reconsider, seeing as how it was completely unfair given the customers were being total jerks. She was fired on the spot. TLDR, my aunt was fired for being a good friend. While I don't necessarily agree with running out there and throwing something at their car, it's just a dime, and it really did sound like they kind of deserved it. I want to know their rationale for leaving a 10-cent tip. That's so much more insulting than leaving nothing. This was a deliberate act to just ruin someone's day. So weird, man. Next story. Not me, but I have a friend I used to work for who got fired 3 to 4 times from our job. We worked at a moving company. One time he dropped a lady's hot tub down a hill and it rolled into a lake and was lost forever. Got fired. A couple months later, boss man needed more labor and brought him back. Second time, I paid him to fight the boss man. He got fired on the spot. Third time, he told one of the customers that one of the other guys we worked with was banging his cousin. The other guy was banging his own cousin, to clarify. Anyway, I guess he's laughing now because he went on to play football for the Arizona Cardinals 2 months later. Funny stuff. Next story. Not fired, but weird nonetheless. 21 years old, just quit college because I didn't see the point. Almost had my journeyman's electrical license. I started work for a new boss. Show up nice and early to say hi to the boss, and he tells me that I'll be working with Ray. Introduces me to the 37-ish, large, balding fellow. I grab my tools and hop in a Ray's work van. Several minutes of quiet is broken by Ray saying, "So I gotta take these freaking DV, domestic violence, classes for beating the crap out of my piece of crap wife." Me, totally taken by surprise and at this point, scared. Totally. When we finished our day, I approached my new boss and told him I would not be working for him anymore. I needed to go back to school and had to find a boss that would accept me as part-time. He smiled at me and said, "I knew Ray would set you straight, kid. Good luck with your life as an educated man." Next story. I was working as a line cook at a fairly busy restaurant. I was the only one scheduled on a Saturday night. The others somehow managed to swing it off. This Saturday was the norm, really, but still busy for one cook to handle alone. I got behind. Waitresses cussing me out. Eventually, some jerk customer came into the kitchen yelling she's been waiting for half an hour. I looked at her ticket, 15 minutes only. Told her I'd have it out ASAP. At the time, I cared about the job. Also told her not to come back into the kitchen again. Another customer decided to mimic the previous one, same result. As I was finishing both the dishes, they came back with 2 extra customers screaming, hollering, etc. I had a bag of goldfish crackers under the line where the plates were stacked. At that time, I had waitresses freaking out on me, the dish boy walked, and my deep fryer kid walked out on me. 3 waitresses, 4 customers who weren't supposed to be in the kitchen, no line cooks, and no other support staff, along with a supply that was dwindling because management didn't order enough freaking inventory. In front of them all, I picked up a large bottle of vodka, 2 liters in size, but only a quarter or so full, and drank the whole thing in front of them, yelling, "You could cook the freaking crap yourselves, you freaking idiots!" Walked out throwing the goldfish crackers at them. Figuring if the whole thing was recorded, I could make the case that there was no one, and not one person should be held alone running a restaurant of that size. Management disagreed. I was given my last pay and told to never step foot on the premises again. 12 months later, they were closed, and I was the executive chef for the new restaurant that took its place. I no longer work for that restaurant, but for reasonable reasons. Next story. Boss found out I actually intended for my temp job to be temporary. Everyone else working there was there for the long haul, even though they were hired through a temp agency, so they got low pay and no benefits. Word got out I was actually quitting in a week. Boss told me I don't need to come next week. I was like, sweet. He wasn't mean at all about it. The company was just taking advantage of people, and I felt awesome having worked there under the assumption that they were going to take advantage of me when I was actually taking advantage of them. Everyone there, chemical packing plant, thought I was weird because I would read books on my lunch break. Next story. I created an account just to share this. When I was 16, I got my first job in a lumber mill. My job was to to lift 70-feet beams with another guy to make them pile up so they could be packed and sent on their merry way. Needless to say, that was pretty demanding on the physical level, or so I still think to this day at least. Now keep in mind that I come from a small town where unemployment strives. I want to afford my stuff to let my parents breathe financially, and I want to go to college the year after. As a teenager with no social security and not part of the syndicate, I pretty much had to do everything the foreman asked me to. But see, the foreman spent his evenings, I worked 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., eating Doritos in his windowed office and watching TV. Needless to say, with our foreman being so aware of his surroundings, one of our machines jammed. What the machine did was lift a 3-meter cubed cube of planks and drop it on a conveyor belt. Now the planks were stuck, and he asks me to unclog it all while he watches. So I'm like, alright, turn off the machine, and he tells me, yeah, it's turned off. It wasn't. As soon as I pulled on the Jenga-esque piece of wood, the machine went back into function and dropped every plank it could on my poor hand, hurting it badly. I raged inside, but I needed the money and knew that 100 people wanted my job, so I was easy to replace. So yeah, I take my break after that without removing my gloves, and I go back to work 10 minutes later. My hand hurts like a female dog, so I ask to take care of the conveyors, which isn't too hard on the physical level. Then the piling up beams part of the lumber mill clogs, because the foreman put everyone on the beginning of the line, so nobody was left to pack the product. So he asks me to come help him piling the beams. I do as best I can, but he traps my hand between beams 3 times in a row and complains that I'm too slow. I throw the beam off the conveyor, well, more like push, walk on them towards the foreman, removing my gloves ready to fight, while shouting that, quote, if his fat freaking butt would do his freaking job instead of getting fatter, eating them Doritos, and actually had a clue about anything, my hand wouldn't hurt, and etc. I don't know exactly what I was saying. I tend to have memory loss when I get angry. Next thing I know, I was going to fight that wild Snorlax and get beaten down probably, while he's like, hey, you're fired and come at me. But I was saved from my anger by my father, who is proud of his son working a man's man job and wanted to check on me. He worked 200 meters away in another factory. When he saw the conditions, he told me to come back immediately and leave this hellhole while shutting the Snorlax up. So as I'm coming back with my father, he drives me to the hospital instead because my hurting hand was black. I'm Caucasian. The foreman later got fired for having relations with a 14-year-old. My godfather is an accountant and he got to work there later on. He quit because, quote, he didn't do slavery. TLDR, foreman breaks my hand, craps on me for not working fast enough to cover for his inefficiency, saved by trainer dad who commands me to return. Foreman is actually a predator, bad man, and the place still sucks. Next story. I was the director of marketing at a mortgage company about 10 years back. We had a new hire doing our blast emailing for us, and the system was a little behind the times. It involved a lot more manual work and repetition than it should have. Basically, each account executive had a separate list of their brokers, so the temp had to start an email for each account exec, select their email list, and then paste in the subject line. Well, at some point, she accidentally copied a line from an IM conversation to her girlfriend into her clipboard, and that became the subject line that went out to about 30,000 customers with our account exec's name in the sender field. It read, "What is it about seeing girls eat kitty that turns guys on so much?" Next story. Not exactly getting fired per se, but one of my managers was removed. On with the story. The store I was working in was hiring a new manager, and part of this process was to give them a test shift in the store to see how well they work, etc. So this new manager who knows nothing about how the particular store ran started telling people what to do, and within matters of minutes, the place was in complete disarray, and with perfect timing that the gods themselves could not muster, he starts screaming at me just as the area manager walks into the store. The area manager is the guy who hired me a couple of months before. Anyhow, he calms him down and the guy apologizes to me and all is well and good. About an hour later, these 2 regular customers who happen to be police officers came in and ordered their usual, but then they pulled me aside, asking about the new guy. I told them his name, and the looks on their faces were that of a cliff face. Almost all humor those guys had just drained away. They proceeded to ask me if there was somewhere private where they could talk to him, but alas, we were in the middle of a lunch rush and the only free space was the freezer. So they pulled the guy aside into the middle of a busy restaurant, ask him a few questions, then arrest him. Never saw him again. Got a call the next day from the police asking me to go through his bag. I found a black book, every page filled with people's names, credit card details, phone numbers, and addresses. Interesting day at work, I would have to say. Next story. 21 and working for a Honda seat maker. Hated the job, but the people were great. I'd planned on going to Woodstock in '99, but had used up all my vacation time. The weekend of the concert comes, and I call in sick on Friday. Go to the concert, it was amazing. At one point, I was high on shrooms and was interviewed by Ed the Sock for Much Music, but I didn't think it would make it to air. I walk into work Monday, and everyone starts cheering. Apparently, my interview went live, and everyone saw it, including the manager. He immediately pulled me into his office and asked me, "Was it worth it?" I said it was, and was escorted from the building. Next story. Got called into a former employer on a contract because they got handed the national contract to take "oh crap, please help" calls after a cyclone had wiped out a chunk of the country's northeast, followed by floods and then fires locally. They called me because I was A, on their old personnel records, and B, down as the fastest call resolver and person helper in 5 states. The difference between what they were paying me and what I made on the dole was exactly the amount it cost to keep filling up the tank in my car for the nearly 200-mile round trip each day. No public transport options that far out in the sticks. But hey, I wasn't doing anything else and I liked helping people, even if we were working Saturdays and Sundays half the time. So one of the Sundays we're chilling there and the waste of space they assigned to be our temp supervisor for the day is telling me that corporate policy is to not change the heights on the chairs and desks we were assigned to for the day, which is crap, because the actual corporate policy is to change the heights to avoid posture problems, and it's even optional to change them back to the original settings afterwards, which I do because I was good guy Gregging a lot of the time. When I point that out, she gets short. I tell her that if she'd bothered to read my file, she would have seen that I've spent 14 years already working at that employer, not just the week I'd been at that office. And most of that time was actually spent in corporate HQ where, the policies on such things were made. So yeah, I actually did have some idea of what I was talking about, and she could avoid further embarrassment by turning around and going back to whatever else she was screwing up that day. Next day, regular supervisor, who honestly looks about 12, and it's pretty obvious this is her first managing gig, calls me over and asks me in that "let's play head games" voice, "Do you want to work here?" Turned out she was not expecting an answer of no, but seeing as how I'm driving 3 hours a day to Hicksville on minimum wage in order to boost your team's stats into the first place and make the company actually able to complete its contractual obligations, and seeing as how I've actually spent more time working for this place than both you and her put together, why don't you do us both a favor and go tell yesterday's supervisor that spouting off about a policy she's never actually read just makes her look stupid and waste everyone's time. Because then if we're lucky, maybe she'll think twice or even once before doing it again. Instant crap can. But it wasn't as if going back on the dole was going to make me have less money in my pocket. It was just going to give me back 55 hours of free time a week, which may have been why I didn't really have a problem speaking truth to power in that circumstance. I feel like people like those crap managers definitely need someone like you who has nothing to lose from talking back to, talk back every now and then. Like even just a realistic standpoint, it's hard for them to expect real feedback when real feedback could get people in trouble, Didn't sound like these are the type to listen to real feedback though, so oh well. Next story. Not me, a guy I know. Wouldn't call him a friend, he's a bit of a grub, but the story is funny. Woman walks in and says, "My son wants this soccer game for Christmas, but I don't know what it's called." Guy says, "Why, that would almost 100% certainly be FIFA 11, which just came out and has been hugely popular." To which this lady simply says, "Not sure." And this guy convinces her for some time until she agrees to purchase as a surprise for her boy. So he says, well, what console is this for?" She says, "Dunno." He asks helpful questions like, "Do you know what it looks like? Are there any of these names familiar?" etc. She says, "Wouldn't have a clue." To which he simply responded, "You're a freaking clown." Woman complains and insta-fired. Next story. I'm not sure if this is relevant because I haven't worked for someone else, instead run my own small business. A guy called me, saying he recently lost a job and has 2 kids and that he badly needs a job to support his family. I instantly hired him without even interviewing him and any investigation to why he was fired from the previous job. 2 months later, one of my staff found him saving my customers' data in his personal diary and sharing it with one of my competitors. I was at home almost asleep when a coworker called me to tell me that. Without even taking a bath and having breakfast, I rushed to the office, grabbed him by the collar and said, "You mother effer, you betrayed me, get lost. If you weren't a father of 2 small kids, I would have put you behind bars." Next story. Worked for this place called the Hat Club years ago. Anyway, I was working at this other hat shop, a hattery type shop, not a ball cap store, and was looking for a second job to supplement my income. I was homeless at the time. When I applied at the Hat Club, they decided they wanted me to work as a manager and wanted me to quit my other job so I could work for them full time. I was a little flabbergasted, but I accepted. I trained, busted my butt, and got my store open. Even with what they were paying me, I still couldn't afford a place to live. It was San Diego after all. Everything is going peachy. I work my butt off and everything is wonderful. Fast forward to a few months in, when the guy who hired me wants to take all the employees at my store to a casino in LA called Pachanga. We went and had dinner. It was nice for a while. Then we sat down in this lounge area. My manager started pestering me to drink. Alcohol. Since I was homeless at the time, I stayed away from alcohol on principle and wouldn't drink it when he asked. He kept bugging me and bugging me and bugging me. I said no every time, but he kept going. I finally had enough. I got up and went somewhere else without so much as a word. Want some money, too. My manager is frantically texting me, I know, homeless guy with a cell phone, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, to come back, and that it's okay, etc. I finally come back and we end the evening. I ride with my coworker and her husband back home in silence. After that, my boss started getting super weird. He actually told me that after what happened that night at Pachanga, he was losing faith in me and my ability to manage the store. His demands on myself and my time became increasingly overbearing and ridiculous. He'd say that I was full of excuses, etc. I stopped caring at some point. On New Year's Day, 2006, the trolleys and buses were delayed a lot because of the holidays. I was going to be late as hell and there was no getting around it. One of my employees called and asked if I could use a ride, and he came and got me. We got to the store about 30 minutes late. I called my boss to tell him what was going on and why it was going on, and his response to me was, "Well, it's like I said, Opie. It's always some excuse." I hung up on him. We opened the store and he kept calling to talk to me. I hung up on him repeatedly. I would not talk to him. I just picked the handset up and put it back down again. After all this, I finally asked my employee if he wanted to go home early that day. He responded yes, and I said if he just gave me a ride to my parents' house about half an hour away, I'd close up and we could go. He agreed. So I emailed my boss a curt letter explaining that I was done with him, tendered a resignation through fax to the home office detailing exactly what had happened, and locked up. We went to the security office and I dropped off the store keys and we blew that freaking popsicle stand. My boss called me sometime after I got home to my parents' house. No one else was home and I had a key. I ignored the call and he left me a message saying I would be arrested for trespassing if I ever came back, but not one crap was given. After that, I asked my dad if I could stay there because I was tired of being homeless, and he agreed. I was able to get back on my feet. I'm no longer homeless. Next story. Worked in an extended family-owned bookstore for a short bit. They were super nice. Paid above minimum wage, enrolled us and paid for, I think, it's been a long time, in a health plan, but the job was kinda dull, and I had a lot of unsupervised free time. Not a good combo. My main day-to-day job was to check in the various shipments every other day. We would get main shipments from 2 companies and smaller, mostly special order stuff directly from publishers. UPS or whomever would visit, and I would get to going through all of the books, making sure packing slips matched up with actual arrivals. To do this, I was set apart from the other booksellers and left in a drafty room adjacent to the loading dock. There was one other guy there, the guy who sent out the phone orders. That dude was weird. Like I said above, I had lots of time to work and was unsupervised for most of it. The actual intake of the books and data entry was always accurate, so no one bothered me. It also gave me lots of time to poke around on their archaic, even for 96, computer system. It was a modified point-of-sale system that had a bit extra. Specifically, it had an in-house email system that I kept trying to access. The logins were all 3 characters long, and I figured these were the initials of each member of the owning family. Turns out I was correct about this, but I couldn't figure out anyone's password to get in. Even taking all of the personal family info I could glean about them, I was locked out. Until one day, being the master hacker that I am, I came across the non-password protected password page. I was in. Now, when I tell this story to people who can see my face and know me, I tell them that I monitored the email accounts for a while before starting the following. Here's my admission that I did no such thing. Instead, I went into everyone's account, noticed it looked like it was empty, and set up accounts for myself and 2 coworkers. Boy, it was fun. We would just message back and forth during the shift, no biggie. We kept it to our 3 accounts for a couple of days, and Then I screwed up. One of the dormant accounts was for a guy who was basically the floor manager, though he had no such title. Only family members actually had titles. He had been with the store for years. Well, a new chain was opening a nice store in a mall in town, and he got the GM job there. Word had just filtered around to us plebes that he was leaving, and I made the grand decision to write a going away email from him to the members of the owning family. The gist of the email was that he was ungrateful for anything they had ever done for him, that work was a hellhole, and it ended with the infamous line, "God damn all you family names, to hell." I sent the email to every family member and immediately sent a message to my friends to go look at the family members' accounts. I had long since shared the login info. We had a laugh, and I came to my senses shortly after. I went back into the system and deleted the email out of everyone's inbox, or so I thought. Fast forward to maybe a week later, and on entering the store, I'm summoned to the office to the oldest family member, the one who started the business 50 years prior and was now basically a figurehead patriarch. The other immediate family members were in his office as well. I really had no idea what to think. I did know members of the extended family before I worked there, so I wasn't uncomfortable, just perplexed. It's not long before one of them mentions how they were looking into starting to hook their computer system up and set up online stuff, and oh yeah, real email. Oh, crap. Poker face, but oh, crap. I'd apparently left one of the family members' inboxes undeleted. The email was in there. I was asked about it, specifically the last line. I'm looking the old man in the eyes, telling him, it was a joke, just a joke. And all he's hearing is, screw you, screw you, screw you. Fired. With a vengeance. Didn't even get walked out, just sort of dismissed and left to my own devices. Female coworker whom I also added in, given 2 weeks' notice of her impending joblessness. I apologize to her every time I see her. She still thinks it's hilarious. Male coworker nada. Can't figure that one out. TLDR. Even when joking, saying God should condemn a whole family to hell is frowned upon. Well, OP, I can't say you were in the right here. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes, I guess. Next story. At the college I went to, I broke a chair by accident at work one night. I went ahead and threw it away in a dumpster and cleaned up the mess and thought nothing of it. The next day I worked, I had forgotten about it, and the university police wanted to have me arrested for destroying property and endangering the lives of others. Needless to say, I was fired, but didn't get charged with anything, but was required to pay back the cost of the chair and do 30 hours of community service. Next story. Working at a Subway in rural Wyoming for tuition money. A local rancher comes in and asks me what the Philly cheesesteak sandwich tastes like. I tell him I haven't personally ordered the sandwich, but I've heard rave reviews and it was ordered fairly often in the shop. He said, well, why haven't you tried it then? I politely explained that I'd been a vegetarian for years and that the only sandwich I eat there is the Veggie Delight. A few days later, I get called into the boss's office. He lists off a large list of reasons why they were letting me go, most of which were complete fallacies, and then ended with, not to mention that we got an angry phone call from a local rancher saying you were rude to his way of life by talking about your vegetarianism. So we're letting you go. He was very careful to say that my vegetarianism wasn't the reason for being fired, but I'm pretty sure that was it. I worked harder than anyone else in that joint because I had something to prove. Good riddance to that job, though. Next story. Not me, but my girlfriend. We lived in a mostly upper white middle class neighborhood. She was working at Subway. One female dog woman comes in with her kids. She, my girlfriend, apparently slightly messed up her order, and she flipped crap. Starts screaming at the manager about how her husband made $300,000 a year, a lie, and how she doesn't have to deal with this. Got into a catfight with my girlfriend. A single cop shows up and breaks up the fight. The manager fires her for, quote, harassing customers. And better yet, we drove by the jerk lady's house and it was being foreclosed. Karma is a female dog. Well, I think one of the biggest things we've learned from this thread is that they started it really doesn't work when talking to an employer. I feel like if a customer starts swinging on you, you don't have much choice, though, to be fair. Anyway, the stories are getting lower and lower quality as I go on, to be honest, so we're going to cut it here, and I think this is the right length anyway, so hopefully we're good. I'd like to thank you all so much for watching. Have you guys ever been fired from a job? What happened? Let me know in the comments and I'll give them a read. For now, though, I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I will see you in the next one.